Welcome, everyone, back to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined, as always, by Jeff Torrey. And today, we want to keep getting you ready for the Fantasy Football Playoffs. I know it's still a few weeks away, but in a lot of cases, a lot of people are talking about everything else, waiver wires, all that kind of stuff to help you for the next couple weeks. So we want to do something a little different and keep helping plan your playoff run, how to get to the playoffs based on what the schedules are. Because at this point of the year, I don't like to look at defenses like early on in the season, before season. But once you're at this point, I think you know who's good and who's bad. And there's some people here that have some awesome matchups for the rest of the season to get you to the playoffs. And maybe guys you're not quite thinking of right now. So we're going to go over that and see who has some of the best schedules and who has some of the worst schedules. So I'm going to start off with best here, because we still got, in most cases, you have a week or two here yet to get some trades. So maybe you can get some of these guys. First one I want to bring up for who has the best schedule for quarterbacks, and this is then for wide receivers as well, the Dallas Cowboys. Schedule is great. So Dak, early on in the year, was struggling a bit, right? He wasn't, and I think he still has some of that, that people aren't maybe as high on him yet. He started the year with 6 points, then 23, 16, 16, then another 6. He had 26 before his bye. Here's 3 games since the bye. 36, 34, and 45 points. And then here is his schedule. Carolina, Washington, Seattle, Philly. You know what? I'm not even that scared. I think that could honestly end up just being a shootout. Buffalo, they're not really scaring me as much anymore. And Miami could be a shootout too. And then even if you have Dak, if you're in the Week 17 championship, they play Detroit. And while obviously we're Lions fans, like Detroit, look what Herbert just did to the Lions the other day. That's a pretty nice schedule for Dak Prescott. And I think you can still go get him from people. You could probably go trade for him and not have to spend a lot, because it's still Dak Prescott and people they're just not that interested in him. They haven't been. People are overlooking those 3 games. I to be honest, kind of have.
Yeah, I have too. I honestly saw that CD Lamb was picking up, and that was kind of what drew my attention to, okay, what has Dak been doing? Because he was very lackluster in the first 5 games. And one more thing, when you were talking about in Week 14 when you hit Philly, one of the teams he just played, it was at Philly. He scored 34 points against them in standard. So
it's no worry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a guy that you can go out and get in a trade. And look, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks that are not going to have near the strength of schedule. You're not going to go out and get a Josh Allen at the moment unless they're from a bad team. Same thing with Hurts, same thing with Mahomes. So who can you actually go out and get? And here's a real question for you. And I'm asking, I have Lamar Jackson, love Lamar, but Lamar is very up and down. If you had a chance to get Lamar or get Dak, what do you think for the rest of the season? Which quarterback would you rather have, and how do you really think they're going to be that far away from one another as far as points rest of season?
I think I'd want Dak.
Because first of all, Dak is already beating Lamar, right? And Lamar, as much as I love Lamar, he can win you a week. There's no doubt, but he's had the same struggles. 7, 27, 28, 32. Started off, those 3 games were really good. And then back down to 10, 19, 39, then 13, 11, 15.
I'd want Dak.
The last 3 games have been pretty bad, and you also have a bye in 13. And you have San Fran in week 16. You start questioning, who would you rather have? Who's a better long-term play?
I think you could go trade Lamar and get Dak. And maybe something else on top of that. Maybe nothing crazy. You probably can't go too nuts with that, but I think you could easily do that. And I think I want Dak. He's been playing really well. They've realized, they got to throw the ball. The run game's really not been great necessarily. So Dak, and then CD Lamb on top of it, but CD Lamb's going to be way harder to go get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? CD Lamb's always been liked, and he's going to be way harder to trade for. I don't feel like Dak is. I just don't feel like it is. And I want Dak. You're right. I want Dak over. You know what? You brought up Josh Allen.
Yeah. And
I'm not.
Josh Allen has a rough schedule.
He does. It's harder. It's one of the tougher ones. So I'm not opposed. I'm not doing this straight up. I'm not trading Josh Allen for Dak straight up because even though
I don't know, I didn't think this is where you're going to go, but I'm about to freak out.
No, but I'm saying like I think there's a very good chance Dak outscores Josh Allen the rest of the year. There really is, but perception is still Josh Allen is number one, right? Is he number? I think is he still number one after last week?
Yeah, I think he's still number one.
So he is. He's number one.
If you put him, if I get into the playoffs, I would still want Josh Allen. But I like
the other thing.
Your head's at.
Josh Allen has a week 13 bye.
That does make it rough.
He has 1 week where he doesn't play.
Well, here's the thing: do you really have to trade Josh Allen in order to get Dak at the moment?
No, but that's the thing. If you could go trade Josh Allen to get Dak, and that's where you could get a nice second piece with that. Yeah. I believe you could get something very good with that. Lamar's harder probably to get that other thing, but you could probably go get Dak and somebody else good. And maybe you trade like a lesser running back or wide receiver to get that better running back or wide receiver from the other team that has Dak.
Yeah.
But we have 4 weeks. If you're really in this, like you need to make the playoffs, we have 4 weeks left. And one of them, you don't have Josh Allen right now.
Yeah. If you're in the hunt and you're not like by far like number 1 or 2, like if you're not guaranteed into the playoffs, you're fighting your way in. I don't mind that. Like this is the moment where you really have to figure out what's worthwhile. Dak feels like an underrated commodity at the moment that's about to hit his stretch. He's already started to hit it, so his price is going up. But he had to prove himself at the same time.
He just stands out to me as the best of these options of players to go get.
By far. I mean, it really is.
I'll bring up some of the other good schedules. The ones who really have the best schedules for quarterbacks are like Minnesota. And everyone loves Josh Dobbs right now, but I feel like that's going to turn back. People have already forgotten what happened in Arizona. He started off kind of like this, where they were in these games and it was interesting. By the end of it, he wasn't good. And there was a reason why they traded him.
They traded him. They didn't get a whole lot for him. I still don't understand why Arizona did that because they don't have a whole lot of depth there. But, I do like him. But, hey, if it's on me,
that would I'm just going to – I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
The Jets have a good schedule, but it's Zach Wilson, and you're just not
cares?
like. Funny enough, Zach Wilson impressed me with some of the throws he made the other day. Like the guy can make insane throws, but
he's got a great arm.
But he's just not. You're not going to play him for fantasy. Chicago, if Fields came back, it's just not there, right? So those are like the best schedules. Denver is pretty decent. Russ is interesting as a streamer coming up. But it's not some guy you're going to go get. But Russ is an interesting streamer.
Yeah, I'll give him that. Like, and we talked about him. He was surprisingly better than what you thought his numbers were. But at the same time, if you're going to the playoffs, I definitely don't want to hang my future on him.
And then I'll just go to the bottom. The Bengals. Joe Burrow has a tough schedule.
Yeah, he has the hardest, like the toughest schedule coming up.
And that's another one where if people aren't paying as close of attention in your leagues, who knows? It depends on. Burrow's been solid. He has been pretty solid these last few weeks. He had a rough stretch when he was hurt. He's been decent, but it's Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville. Colts are easy. Minnesota, but then Pittsburgh and Kansas City in the playoffs. I'd want Dak.
I would too.
So I think that's another trade you could probably pull off. Is you could trade Burrow and get Dak. I know that sounds crazy to try to go for Dak, but I think you can do it. And I would feel comfortable, way more comfortable actually with Prescott over Burrow, I think. So, all right, some other, like, unless you got any other quarterbacks that stand out schedule wise.
No one that is gonna shock anyone. Yep. I will say, what are your feelings about Kyler? Because he does have a very good schedule coming up.
Yeah, he's actually. He should, if he's some reason still out in your league, go put him on your bench and see what happens. But he could be interesting if it starts figuring it out there. They got the win. And
he might be one that I once again, I don't really want to trade for him because I'm not sure.
I don't want to trade for him, but
if he's out there, you could grab him, put him on. And I would love him to be my number 2 just in case if you have someone that you're not sure about. But the other one, there's no one else that I really love. Like everyone else that has a good schedule besides for Mahomes, but he was going to be played no matter what, right? He's pretty much Teflon at this point. CJ Stroud has a very good schedule.
Yeah,
I know everyone's loving on him.
I think at this point it's probably just hard to even get him.
You're not going to trade for him. Yeah, that's true.
It's just hard, I think, because.
But if you had CJ Stroud, everyone's loving on him. Do you think he's another guy you could go out and get maybe a twofer if it's like a Dak and
you could probably get something. CJ Stroud's interesting. I have him in the league. I have Josh Allen.
I have him in one of mine too.
Yeah. He's my backup to Josh Allen. Now I'm like, shoot, should I play him over Josh Allen?
CJ is, I mean, I had Goff and I went out and got him because I was like, I needed someone
Goff
to
has
back
a good
up.
schedule too.
Yeah.
So
anyway, there's no one else that really like caught my attention. Like Dak was the main guy.
Yeah, running back. I do have one that just on the negative end that I feel like you need to go trade right now. It's Kenneth Walker. The schedule is not great. It's the Rams, 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles, Tennessee, but then Pittsburgh. That's not good. And to top it off, Zach Charbonnet's been playing a lot. The split is at least 50. It's about 50-50. And I think Charbonnet's been playing a few more snaps. Walker, the reason I think he's the number 5 running back on the year, which is crazy. Boosted by this past week where he had a 64-yard touchdown catch. Take that away. One random 64-yard catch, and it's just a 19 for 63 day. Nothing great at all. The week before, 9 for 16. The week before, 8 for 66. It's not been wonderful the last couple weeks, and the schedule is so brutal. I think you can go, though, and get someone's going to want Ken Walker. And I'm telling you, in most leagues, not everyone's looking at future schedule like this. They just don't. I mean, we have, in our leagues, there's people that are like, oh, yeah, give me Ken Walker. And they're not going to look at all about the schedule yet and be like, oh, wait, never. That was a bad decision. But I think you can go trade Ken Walker and get some good players out of it. So that's one I think you just definitely should look at trading away for sure. So I don't know what you could get. I think you could get decent players for him. I really do.
He's still a name. He's a running back. They're hard to come by.
And just go sell it. Hey, number 5 running back.
Yeah.
And go get, I don't know what exactly, it depends on what team needs a running back, what's out there. Sure. But you can definitely, I think he's just one that you should try to look at trading away. That schedule, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Going down the stretch. So that was my main one. For the easy schedules, running back wise, Chargers actually have a pretty easy schedule, but Eckler's not, if you have him, you're just plugging him in. He's going to be good, and you're probably not going to go get him in a trade.
Yeah. I looked at these, and I don't think there's anyone that is up there. Like, you're giving guys another chance, right? So, like, Tony Pollard, once again, he's too big of a name. I don't think you can really go out and get him because I do think he will turn it around a bit because he has such a good schedule. But other than that, I mean, who else are, like, even if you have a good schedule, these guys are kind of locked and loaded. Like, Rachaad White, once again, it's hard to go after a running back. And
it is. Okay, how about this? Would you do this? Do you think, or would anybody, I don't know, would you trade Ken Walker for Derrick Henry?
Yeah, for Derrick Henry?
Yeah, but Derrick Henry's had this negative, like, especially this past week, like, he had a bad game, right? So this could be the time to do it again. This is his second or third time he's done that this year. He's had a lot of good weeks in between. Ken Walker coming off the big week, Derrick Henry coming off the poor week, and Derrick Henry has a much better schedule though going forward than Ken Walker's.
Actually, that's a great point because I do forget that Kenneth Walker is 5th.
Yeah, and Henry's below him.
Yeah, and he did actually. You know what? That I do like that. Like Kenneth Walker is one where you get a lot in return, and you forget that maybe Derrick Henry or another big time running back is very possible.
Well, in the Derrick Henry thing, if the Derrick Henry owner has Tajay Spears, go get Spears too.
Yeah, please.
Get Spears too.
Well, I start thinking that. I mean, I look at Alvin Kamara. He's another one. Like, look, he's 17th currently. He's about to hit his bye. But if you're looking for something like value to get from Ken Walker or another one of these, he is a guy that is outproducing most people, but because he's averaging more than Kenneth Walker or about the same. But he's about to have a little bit better of a schedule too, and he's a little more fresh. So, yeah, I like that. The same thing with Rachaad White, even though he's averaging about 2.5 points less than Kenneth Walker. Do you take that schedule over him? Because he does have a better schedule too. I don't know.
Here's another interesting one that could be maybe right now you can pull it off because he's not back yet. Kyren Williams. It looks like he's not going to come back until week 12. So it looks like he's going to miss this upcoming game. But when he comes back, the schedule's, I mean, there's some it's hit or miss, right?
Yeah.
There are when he comes back in week 12, it's an Arizona matchup. That should be pretty good. But then it's Cleveland, Baltimore. That could be a little rougher. But then it's Washington, Saints, Giants. It's a good end. I just don't know what it would take. I guess if somebody has Kyron Williams, you feel it out. You don't want to give up much at all for him because he's coming off an injury. You don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, you don't want to
No, you don't want to do much. But if you could get him for little, maybe try to pull it off. I mean, Henderson and Freeman aren't it. So they're not it. But so Kyron Williams just interesting. Don't trade much, but maybe it's there. The schedule could be. It's the playoff schedule is good. The 2 weeks before the playoffs are rough.
What do you think? And once again, huge name, all this. He's been up and down, and we sing his praises, but at the same time, we're like, they're not using him in the way that is going to benefit fantasy owners. Bijan for the rest of the year, because he did just come off a good one, but you're about to go into a bye. But he is very hit and miss.
He is.
Do you feel good enough where you would be able to trade enough in order to get him? Is he a name that you'd be looking for, or are you saying you're not going to get value? You would actually have to give up too much to get him.
I feel like you'd have to give up too much. I feel like whoever has Bijan is not going to trade him for nothing, most likely. And he's coming off 22 carries, I think, this past week. I think he got 22. Then I believe they're going into a bye, right?
Yeah, 22.
And are they going into the bye this week?
They're going into the bye.
Okay. Yep. The schedule's not bad. I think it's average after he comes back. I just don't think you can get him. I don't think you wouldn't want to trade much because, again, you have a bye, especially it depends on, he has a bye, you're going to lose a week. It's just probably hard to actually trade for him.
Yeah. Okay.
Wide receiver wise, we talked about CeeDee Lamb. I think it's hard to get CeeDee Lamb. Patriots have an awesome schedule. I don't want anybody from them at all. And then some others have good schedules, but how are you going to get these guys? Eagles, it's AJ Brown. You're not going to get AJ Brown, right? You're not going to get it from anybody. Yeah. San Francisco has a decent schedule. Brandon Ayuk, maybe Brandon Ayuk's available.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing with fire on that one because you have to try to pick out who's going to be good. Because same thing, Debo, Kittle. I mean, no one on that team is off limits besides McCaffrey. So if you really wanted one of those guys, you just have to pick correctly.
Yep. Houston has a pretty solid schedule for wide receivers coming up. But who is it? Tank Dell? I like Nico. Tank Dell, but I like Nico. But it's hard to know who's Nico's actually going to. You don't want to go bank on any of those guys for your fantasy hopes right now. They can do well for you, but you don't want to go try to get them.
No, it'd be more. And I like those guys, but I do wonder. Same thing with CJ. Like if you had a better option, like a more guaranteed guy.
Yep.
I do wonder if you try to take all the guys that have been overproducing, you think, and maybe you get feelers like maybe if I put 2 of them together, I can get a guaranteed guy or something.
Yeah.
What about Cooper Kupp?
Yeah. So the Rams' schedule is okay. If Stafford's back, I think Cooper Kupp could have a good end of season. I really do. Again, the problem becomes the person who has Cooper Kupp. Are they just attached to the name and what they paid for him? So I feel like it could be tough to actually try to trade him. But feel it out. I would feel it out.
You'd have to give up a decent amount. Player. But if you think he's going to be Cooper Kupp,
he could be.
That's a playoff maker, right?
Yep. I'd feel it out. I'd feel out the Cooper Kupp owner. I mean, and Puka too could have good, but I like Puka, but I don't want to go trade much for Puka because it's still, I don't want to say it doesn't feel real fully, but I'm still not fully there. You know what I mean? I'm just not I'm not all the way bought in. I think the guy's really good, but I have a hard time yet until it's, I'm not there yet, I guess. But I like Cooper Kupp one. I'd go feel that one out and see what's there if you can go, pull something off. Like we said earlier about Buffalo with Josh Allen, the Stephon Diggs, maybe the schedule's not great. And man, they just fired their offensive coordinator.
That's a very good point about the offensive coordinator. I thought the same thing, and I don't think he really came with a lot of value, but I was thinking the same thing for James Cook.
Yeah.
Kind of a fun name or whatever, but
it's hard to know how it's going to go. With that, what they're going to do now, but they're 5-5 and they're struggling. So you think they're going to have to get their playmakers involved. Their schedule's not great, but I don't know. It's tough. It could go a million ways. I have a hard time.
And I will say this: if I had to play, Josh Allen and Diggs are 2 guys that you pretty much slot in. You're playing no matter what. So, even if they have a bad schedule, you still feel pretty good playing them.
Yep.
But I like to tweak it. There's always something better you can get for the most part.
Yep. And then tight ends, man, it's tough.
It is tough. I will bring up one person just because I thought in my head I got him a few weeks ago because I had Kyle Pitts. I needed someone else because he wasn't doing the job. I threw Trey McBride on my bench. He's my starter now. He is only owned in 50% of leagues, so I could talk about him as a waiver pickup.
Yep.
He also has a good schedule to finish the year. And if, once again, he's not going to be, everyone's going to be talking about it because everyone needs a tight end for the most part. But the last 3 games, he's been very, very useful. First of all, week 8 against Baltimore, 10 receptions on 14 targets for 95 yards and a touchdown. The next week, 3 catches with 5 targets, 22. And then this past week, 8 receptions, 9 targets, 131 yards. He is really going in the right direction. You have Kyler, who actually was back in this last one, so you're seeing a rapport. Ever since they made him the number 1 tight end, or it's obviously out of the picture with injury, but he's been amping up his production every single game, and he's becoming a very useful target. Tight end is so shallow. Once again, I've said it a million times that all of a sudden McBride is a top. He's a tight end one.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Jake Ferguson too.
He's a great one.
Jake Ferguson has a good schedule. He's interesting. Then the other, like the names, the big names actually have good schedules. Like Kelsey and Andrews, they're solid. Laporta has a good schedule. So there isn't really many you're not going to use. I mean, Njoku, I think, has an okay schedule if you're in that kind of position. Some of the ones that have negatives, there's not a lot. Pitts isn't great. So I mean, but you're struggling. If you're
struggling anyway. Yeah.
So
he was the only one that is kind of out there that you probably can get your hands on. So that's why if he is out there, I would throw a good amount on him to get him if you're struggling at tight end. Otherwise, like, you have a Taysom Hill and it's going to be either feast or famine, or you have one of the top 4 guys you can't do. So
one other name not tight end. I just thought about this one for a minute. Back to running back because he hasn't played in a while, so he's coming back and people could be excited. Khalil Herbert, right? So he was on IR. Right before he went on IR, he actually did something. He was interesting for a couple weeks, and I've heard some excitement about him coming back. And he was dropped in a couple leagues, and actually people went nuts on Fab to pick him up last week. The problem is his schedule sucks.
Yeah.
So, and Foreman's etched out a role too. Like, if you don't go banking on, I'll say it's further down, but do not go banking on Khalil Herbert. Don't get too excited. Plays against Detroit, which Detroit's pass defense hasn't been good, but their run defense has been pretty solid. Minnesota's a solid run defense. Then he has a bye. Then it's Detroit again. Then it's Cleveland. It's not good. So just.
And too many people are running the ball in that offense.
Yeah,
mean, even the quarterback is going to. You just don't know. And if he's coming off injury,
if you're thinking you have something coming back, no, I don't think you do. So I don't know. I don't think you can get much from him at all. But it's just one of those. I've seen some talk about it. People excited he's coming back. I'm like, the schedule's terrible. So you don't want any part of it. But all right, there we go. Just trying to help you guys find some stuff. Think about trading Josh Allen. I will say that. Think about it. And I have him, so I got to think about it. But actually, I can't. I'll trade it on a pass in that one. But just think about it. It's not crazy. He's still number 1 quarterback, but it's not crazy if you can get some stuff. So just see what you can do. And trade Ken Walker. But all right, that'll do it. Talk to you guys next time.